Hello, friends. Welcome to With Under Applause, a podcast where two friends get together to discuss the events and ideas that will shape our uncertain future. My name is Steve. I'm your host, along with my co-host Zach. What's up, my friend?
That's this guy right here.
That's you
Not much, man. Made a pizza today. It was really good. I'm
with your
getting pretty good at
sourdough.
it. Yeah, I'm
Is
getting
your
pretty good at
sourdough
it.
skills getting dope?
Yeah. I
No, that's
also
a good survival skill. That's a
stuffed the
good
crust.
hey, I'm needed on your fucking post-zombie apocalypse commune. I can bake bread.
Exactly.
You're like, I got skills. Hold on, wait.
Wait,
You're like, no, we don't have computers and electricity anymore. Those skills are worthless. You're like, I can bake bread.
if I could just look it up online real quick.
Oh wait, no. I got a book. I got a starter. You're like, I have a 30-year-old starter. You know the like lineage of your fucking sourdough starter and shit.
This one's Big Bertha.
Big Birth. Yeah, I'm a little late. Apologies, and thank you so much for bearing with us as we got started today. I was hanging out with a friend I haven't seen in the fucking meat space. I think since he got married. No, we hung out once. I think it was right before I went to Afghanistan. So that was 2014.
Yeah.
So 9 years or so.
Yeah.
We maybe exchanged a handful of emails in the interim, and just this last year tried to really make an effort to hang out and stuff. So that's why I'm late. I was drinking delicious beers at a bar and eating fucking German pretzels and a chicken sandwich, which was pretty tasty, and just generally hanging out and drinking beers. Now I'm home.
Don't you raise chickens? Couldn't you make your own chicken sandwich?
We could, and it would cost considerably less, but it's not the same as hanging out with people. And also,
True.
We don't really want the stress of entertaining people in a house that is clearly kind of more like a den than an entertainment space.
Yeah.
It is definitely a little fucking, like a foxhole or, mini animals or den making animals.
That's if you sunk it down into the ground a little bit, it would definitely fit into the 70s. I think
I always liked those where the living room was like a couple steps down.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are sick. All right, well, we have a fucking interesting show tonight. It's shooting. We're not really even shooting the poodoo. This is like a regular episode. We have a single subject, fully produced. So we're not calling it shooting the poodoo, even though shooting the poodoo is normally Thursdays. We shoot the poodoo so often. Today, we're actually just going to do a regular show. So, ongoing, obviously, dominates news headlines. I heard a joke from someone that's like literally no one is talking about anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
makes you wonder what's going on.
Yes, but what is going on? It's not like Congress is passing all of these fucking crazy, obscene laws that are like going to fuck us over because Congress still doesn't have a fucking speaker. Or I should say the House doesn't have a speaker.
It's wonderful. That one guy
It's fucking absurd. It feels like, it's weird yesterday. Like we heard sirens going that way. And then we heard like a bunch of people like in and around. Like we're kind of on an area of town where like sound can echo pretty far just based on the layout and like where the hills are in relation to our edge of the city because we're right at the edge of town. We heard a lot of horns honking right around the time there were a lot of sirens, and we're like, what the fuck is going on? And so, of course, Brooke, my partner jumps onto like Nextdoor or Facebook. There's a couple Facebook pages that of middle-aged ladies with nothing else better to do than to gossip and listen to the fucking police scanner. I don't know.
I met one of those.
I got kicked out of the group like almost immediately for like suggesting we maybe like take a deep breath and wait for more information to come out before we start freaking out about something. And then they removed me from the group, so I haven't been in it for a long time. But anyway, she looked on those and couldn't find anything except like, oh, there's an apartment fire on North Cedar. And I was like, this engine way up here is not most likely not driving there because there's like 4 other stations with engines that are closer.
Mm-hmm.
They're probably not drawing the one from farthest away. But it could have been, but it also could have been a car accident or any manner of things, right? Like they could be like, oh, we found somebody passed out on the side of a building, and then an ambulance and a fire truck goes, and it turns out it was just some dude taking a nap, like a homeless person taking a nap, or maybe it was someone who nodded out fucking on heroin and they give him fucking, whatever, naloxone or whatever. But at any rate, it could have been a number of those things. But anyway, the energy felt really weird, and Brooke got really weird when I was like, you know what? I have both of my rifles are like packed away pretty deep, and I don't have any ammunition like in a magazine ready to go. Like, I'm gonna sit down and pull out my neat little case that I made like a few weeks back ago. It's like a little canister finally of one type of fucking ammo.
Okay.
And I loaded up some magazines and set them on the shelf, and I was like, now I'm ready to go. And pulled my rifles out and made them more accessible. And
So you
also
pulled
safe.
out your gun.
But anyway, she's just like, this is really weird. And I was like, well, the energy's really weird. And she's like, is the energy really weird because you're watching movies about the fucking nuclear war? And I was like, is my energy really weird because, like, we're really close to fucking nuclear war? I don't know. Maybe. So anyway, that's what the show tonight is about. We're going to talk about the ongoing conflict in Israel, or I shall say Palestine, so-called Israel. But we're really not talking about that in particular. I think that a lot of folks are talking about a lot of the things that are happening, and I think a lot of it is really important to talk about. But a lot of people are talking about this hospital, which I'm sure you heard about.
Yeah.
Real
Who
big
hasn't?
game changer. Finally got the United States to kind of shift rhetoric. Really united a lot of people who had, for the last week, been kind of like standing back, and then this clear violation of international law and human rights took place, and even made like the US got disinvited from a bunch of meetings it was supposed to have with other countries. They're like, no, fuck you, because you back them after this, like, fuck you. And then at first, like, do you know many of the details? Would you like to enlighten me, or do you want me to rattle off what I think I know?
You talking about the hospital bombing itself?
Yeah.
You go first. I only have one thing that I heard that is rather compelling.
I originally heard Israel bombed the hospital, and I heard 3 to 500. At first, I heard 35, but it was 3 to 500.
Yes.
And I heard Israel bombed it. And then later I heard, oh, no, wait, Israel didn't bomb it. The Palestinians bombed their own hospital. And then I heard, oh, no, wait, it wasn't really Hamas. It was Palestinian Islamic Jihad that like had an errant errant missile, like, right, that went there. And so since then, my gut instinct was like, nah, dude, that was fucking Israel, because Israel's bombed hospitals before, we know. Also, Israel said, hey, we're going to bomb this hospital. You need to get out. And then many of the people on the ground are like, no, Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad don't have weapons big enough to do this much damage. And so clearly it was probably Israel, but like Israel was like at first like, yeah, that was totally us, but it was fine because we warned them. And then the international community is like, it doesn't matter if you warned them, it's a hospital. You can't just fucking bomb hospitals. And they're like, oh, no, it was the fucking Islamic Jihad. That's who did it. Right? So that's how I understand it. And what they did was take it from Israel bombed hospital to, we're not sure. We think Islamic Jihad bombed hospital, because that's what Israel said. And so that's what we go with. And then the whole media sphere is like, you can't mention it without being like, it could be Islamic Jihad, without like being labeled a fucking terrorist, because the propaganda is so thick.
Yeah.
What'd you hear?
The only thing I heard is that there's some video of the bombing circling around, complete with audio, and some people have noted that the noise that you're hearing in the audio is the sound of a missile that is screaming through the air at top speed, and that Hamas does not have rockets that are modern enough to go that fast. Even it's pretty much just shit like
they've
taped
boasted
on.
that they've torn up, because Israel turned off the water to some parts of those cities a long time ago, and so they've been tearing up the water pipe because there's no water in them anyway. And then they've been making fucking makeshift missiles out of them. And so you're correct in saying like, no, they're literally manufacturing these out of like scrap. So they are not going to have the same performance as a purpose-made missile.
And so based on the audio evidence, there are people that are saying like there's no way that was from Hamas. That had to have been a more modernized nation, maybe Israel.
One of
Yeah.
the pieces of evidence of Israel,
Maybe.
after Israel changed its mind, after taking ownership, and they decided to be like, no, wait, we're not assuming ownership. After there was some backlash, that's a big tell too, right?
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, it was us, but it's fine because we warned them. And then the whole international community is like, hey, fuck you. And they're like, oh, no, it wasn't us. It wasn't us. Why do you think
Yeah.
it was us? It's like, because you literally just said it was you. They're like, no, it was Islamic Jihad. And they're like,
Yeah.
here is evidence. There's we intercepted, our intelligence intercepted a conversation of two people talking about a missile that they launched accidentally veering off path and crashing into the hospital. And you're like, do any of you speak fucking Arabic? Does anybody speak it? I haven't seen anybody who speaks Arabic listen to that and be like, yeah, that seems authenticated. And who says that there's not some kind of an Israeli intelligence official? Certainly, they probably almost all of them speak Arabic, given where they live and their function in suppressing Arabic speakers, right? Like,
Yeah.
you don't think that they could just fabricate like just two dudes having a conversation? Oh yeah, dude. Oops, sorry about that.
Bomb that hospital.
Oh, see, we have evidence right here. See, there's two people. We intercepted their communications.
Yeah.
Like, you could just fucking fabricate that. You don't
Yeah.
even need AI because it's just audio. And you're the only one that has it, and you're the one releasing it. So, like, how can that be like proof? It's like proof here, right here. We have this audio tape.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, I believe you the first time when you were like, oh, yeah, it's fine because we warned them before we bombed it.
Hey man,
That's
audio
what I'm
tape
gonna
was good
believe.
enough to get Nixon.
It's true.
Yeah. Another thing I saw was like, here are some scenes of what Hamas rockets have done in the past. And it's like might like punch a hole through the roof and like blow out a wall or something like that. But that's about it. So it's
No,
like,
it
yeah.
wouldn't level a fucking wing of a hospital.
Well, and given the fact that like some of the stuff that I've read in researching this has just been that the lockdown is so intense that they can't get even basic building materials. Like they're not making fucking tomahawks or anything like that. It is basic ass shit. Dummy rockets. Yeah.
100%, bro. 100%.
But who knows if history will tell it that way or if it'll all get covered up. Guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, so we have a really big show. It might be over an hour. Do you want to maybe just kind of
It's
wing it?
too
We'll
big.
do this Monday.
I'm gonna say it's too big, and that 39-page document that you sent me in email.
That wasn't 39 pages.
It was 39 pages, dude. Or else
Was it really?
unless you wanted me to look at like one specific thing, I saved it as a PDF, and it was 39 pages.
It was an email.
Yeah, and I saved
I
an
just
email
read
as
it.
a PDF.
I can't tell how many pages because it's just an email. It just keeps scrolling.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean,
There's a lot of images though, and a lot of space.
that might be what it is. Yeah, but I looked at it for like 20 minutes.
It
It
takes
was
up a
just
lot
like,
of space on printed paper, but it wasn't a lot of words.
oh, I didn't print it out. I printed a PDF.
Yeah.
But yeah, went ahead and looked at that. So I don't have that ready. I don't have that marked up at all. It just seemed too daunting, and so I focused on other things instead.
All right, surprise me. Or we can talk about this. Did you hear that the U.S. has a fucking missile defense naval vessel? I forget. It's called a missile interceptor. Is that it? Are you
I mean,
familiar with
that's
the vessel?
typically fallen to frigates, but I think frigates have been decommissioned, so this must be a new type that I'm unaware of.
Either way, it was in the Red Sea apparently, and apparently they're like, we intercepted several long-range rockets that were going from Houthi rebels, Iranian-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen, presumably with targets in Israel. And I'm like thinking to myself, like, that's a pretty long-range missile if it can travel from fucking Yemen to Israel accurately.
You're right.
And of course, they're like, oh, Iranian-backed Houthi rebels, right?
That is so far. Oh, okay. Okay, let's see here. I'm gonna
And they
measure,
said they intercepted them or whatever. So they're basically like trying to like build a case that I'm convinced that like the objective is to, I mean, that's the whole episode that we were going to do today, but we'll do on Monday instead.
yeah.
Because today is
please.
Shooting the Poodoo. What episode? 37.
37.
Nice. 37. Do you remember where that number is special?
Docking, no.
I just found out
THX
I'm not even
1137.
supposed to be at work today, and I smell like shoe polish, and I just found out my girlfriend sucked 36 dicks, and then Randall's like 37 from
Me,
Clerks.
yeah. Also, THX 1137, I believe.
Yeah, that sounds right. But I was just thinking from
Oh,
Clerks.
it's 1138. That's right. Okay.
Sucked 36 dicks, and then Randall has to remind him it was 37.
Such a great movie.
It is such a great movie.
Truly stands the test of time. So it is 1,000 miles from the nearest border of Yemen to the nearest border of Israel. So it seems pretty
1,000?
unlikely. Yeah, so that's a missile traveling 1,000 miles without being noticed.
Well, they were in the Red Sea, so they
Oh,
intercepted it as
gotcha.
it flew by, basically, is what they're
Gotcha.
saying. I don't know the circumstances. I think it's awfully suspicious because we knew that a second strike carrier group was going to the Eastern Mediterranean. We did not know there were going to be naval vessels doing missile intercept in the Red Sea.
Yeah.
Mightily convenient.
Oops, sorry.
Not saying that they wouldn't put ships there, because we also have a drone base in Djibouti, right? Which is accessible via the Red Sea. Because Djibouti's on the Red Sea.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it makes sense that like U.S. vessels would be there, especially kind of these smaller frigate type vessels. I'm not sure what the terrain looks like in the Red Sea. I mean, obviously it's passable because the Red Sea is the access to the Suez Canal.
Yeah, it's lots
Tons
of
of
little
fucking
islands.
ocean-going deep cargo ships go through there.
Yeah, looks like lots of little islands, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was overall pretty shallow because it's the result of rifting. So it would just be as deep as the ocean has managed to carve out in the time since it first rifted.
Mm-hmm.
So not too terribly deep and probably pretty rocky and dangerous.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
probably. But they had a vessel there apparently, and of course they're like, it belongs to Iran. And they're really thirsty for going to war with Iran. But I think you should play the very first clip that we were going to play, just that part.
Yeah.
And then we'll talk about that. Day 4.
Day 4 of what?
Good evening, I'm Don Tobin. The Persian Gulf is the center of turmoil again today as the Soviet-backed government of Oman has imposed a toll on all oil ships entering the Strait of Hormuz.
Is that the only clip that I had you play? It was to the Strait of Hormuz?
That's the only clip you pulled out.
That's lovely. Well, I didn't want to get copyrighted. That was a big reason.
Yeah.
Because even though that's posted on YouTube, it is the production company that posted it on their own YouTube channel. So I don't want to if it was some other random dude, I'd be like, I can pull a little tiny piece and be like, well, homie's got it up, or the whole thing up, and he hasn't had it taken down by copyright, right? And that might be actually our topic tonight, since we're going to do kind of a relatively free form, is censorship. But at any rate, this is from a movie called Countdown to Looking Glass.
Yeah.
And Looking Glass, I believe, was the code name for the Doomsday command and control ship. I think that's what it was. It's like Looking Glass, Operation Looking Glass was when they had just command and control ships airborne 24 hours a day, preparing for when everything gets nuked and you want to still try and make sense out of it. I watched a very interesting movie. I want to say it was called Unimaginable Horror, which I think is a bad name, but that was the title on YouTube. Mm-hmm. But it was like a nuclear disaster survival movie, which I thought was actually pretty cool. I think it would be fun to watch a bunch of YouTube available nuclear disaster movies and then do a review and an accuracy check at some point in the future. But of course, have to provide you and your partner enough time to watch all those movies and process them, right? And be able to do that. But this one was like fairly realistic. But there was a lot going on that I was like, this is bullshit. Like someone like bangs on the door and there's like a bunch of confusion. So someone shoots through the door, which is like, sure, I guess could happen. But it was the second time it happened. Someone shot through a door at something on the other side. They didn't know what it was. Like, I guess if they're not trained or it's like, they don't know better, right? But like anybody that's competent with firearms, I mean, you don't fucking. What are you likely to do is just send a bunch of fucking splinters back at your face, and or not hit your target, and or shoot somebody that's like not a target. And that's what happened, right? It was a friend of the family that had like been like, I don't know where else to go. Like I came here because it's the only thing I thought of. And he's fortunately got shot on the wrist. So they're like, oh, dude, you're fine. You know, you got, like they're like, calm down. There was this like big dramatic scene where they're like trying to get him to calm down. And then also someone else who was already kind of like on the edge of freaking out to calm down. And they're like, you've only been shot through the wrist. You're really, really lucky. We just need to like bandage you up and ensure we stop the bleeding or whatever. Which was, I think, pretty cool. But he just came down.
Okay.
And was already looking like he had like severe radiation exposure. They didn't have him strip or nothing. That was my point. Is that they several times through the movie had people go up outside, even if it was just out of the cellar for a brief periods of time. You can leave your shelter, right? Like you're just trying to like stop most radiation. But if you need to leave the shelter, usually try and wait at least 3 days before that. But then after that, like if you're like, we need to shelter for a week or more, like after a few days, you can probably do like really short stints outside and not like exceed your dosage. I know a lot of people don't understand that either, but they were like, you know, like let's take the bodies to the top floor so we don't smell them, right? And then we don't have to go outside into the actual dust and shit.
Yeah.
But like there were people coming in and out at some point. Some people like stormed them and stuff. And it's just like they're just coming in from outside and like they're doing no decontamination.
Right.
Like where they should have been like, everybody get on that side of the fucking cellar until we can like decontaminate this area because someone just came in covered in fucking fallout.
Yeah.
There was none of that. Which I thought was weird. And then, you know, some other kind of
things. How many people know about Fallout? You know, it's going to take some people who actually like, you know, paid attention. I think at best you get like 1 in 10 people that are like, oh yeah, I know how to deal with Fallout.
Yeah, what they alluded to is the main character of the movie, who I want to say dies near the end. Spoiler alert. They're like, wait, why is this person who was like doing a medical residency in New York City, like in fucking North Texas when this happened? And then like there was like a conversation you had to kind of really be paying attention that he's basically like, I saw like the situation degrading and decided to leave New York City. He's like, and my fiance wouldn't leave. So I left my fiance and I came, and that's why I was here alone, because I hadn't made it home to my parents yet. And you kind of get this picture that like this dude just decided to go home for the end of the world, and then it happened. They're like out driving cars when the fucking blast goes off, and they just like get on the ground, and it's really, really low budget. So like a lot of the movie takes place in like the basement and is more like interpersonally driven.
How old is this movie?
Fairly new, I think.
Oh no.
But when I say very low budget, I mean this feels like a film school type of final project type of film. But I mean it was pretty good, right? Like, and so like most of the personal drama in the basement was pretty good. I felt like they really mispaced the action because it was like something's attacking us, something is bad happening here, and the only breaks you got were really depressing. And then like at the end of the movie, then like the budget somehow improved, and then they were like came out of the basement to fight this marauding group that you had no context for. It was a little weird, but like you should check it out. But it was kind of interesting for the most part. I just kind of look at it like I do most movies and say, hey, like, where are you getting things wrong? Like,
yeah,
this wouldn't have happened. I was like, wait, this on the screen, it just said 10 days after first exposure. And they're just like, hey, we need to get down into the basement now. And I was like,
you're all dead.
Fucking 10 days later is too late. And sure as shit, that was part of it, right? Is that like through this saga of them being locked in the basement together, they're all getting sicker and sicker and sicker and sicker.
Yeah.
And a bunch of them died. Like one woman, you know, they kind of easily, right? Like most people who know radiation, right, are like, as soon as he's like, how far along are you? She's like 7 months. And we're like, oh, she's going to miscarry. Right.
Yeah.
And then there was a scene where her like fiance or the baby's daddy or whatever got mad and like, or was just like frustrated. He handled it the least well, although he was a character that made it till the end and repaired his relationship with the main character, which was kind of like the thread. But at one point he was freaking out and he grabbed her face and he's like, what are we gonna do? Blah blah blah. And when he pulled his hands away, she was all fucking bruised from where he touched her because of the radiation.
Yeah. Ooh.
And that was kind of a big moment. And then of course, like she miscarried and then died from it in another scene. And we're like, yeah, you fucking set that shit up as soon as you're like, oh, you're pregnant. And we're like, oh, okay, she's gonna lose the fucking baby as part of the fucking movie because like all of them got it. And that's what my point was. Is like how this guy knew about fucking radiation and he wasn't sheltered. Like the first like 20 minutes of the movie is like the bombs drop. He finds someone on the side of the highway.
Yeah.
They team up, or they were on the same stretch of highway. They team up. They find a vehicle that can start after the EMP, like a diesel vehicle. And then they go like loot a gas station. They try and find shelter. The people there shoot him in the shoulder. So he's dealing with a fucking. He pulls the bullet out at one point, but he's dealing with a wounded shoulder the whole movie. And then, yeah, and they're running around. And then they find this place where there's a bunch of people, and they pull a gun on him, but he like somehow like with a wounded shoulder wrestles the gun out of his hand. And he's like, I'm not gonna get shot again today. Like, I'm in charge now, bitch. Basically,
sounds like an action hero.
Like, you go grab linens from upstairs. You grab and take all the food down to the cellar. We're all going to the cellar. This is 12 hours later. They're like now going down to the cellar. It's like, I know as soon as shit seems real, like I'm gonna start building my shelter and like the nearest fucking obviously bombs can drop anywhere. The nearest most likely place that a bomb will drop is 60 miles south, and it would have to be just the right day that like winds are blowing with any consequence north from there.
Yeah.
And so, and even then, under that worst case scenario, we probably still have an hour-ish to like get ourselves set up.
Certainly not 10 days, though.
No, not 10 days. And then, no, 10 hours is what it was. Sorry.
Oh.
Did I say 10 days?
You did at the very beginning.
It was 10 hours, but still. Like, they literally were like one of the, of course, because at some point in one of these movies, a kid has to go blind for looking at the fireball. Because that was the same in the day after, which took place in Kansas, and it had like John Lithgow. And I think I told you about this one. It had John Lithgow and Steve Guttenberg, like those very popular actors in the 80s.
I've heard of him.
Yeah, you know Steve Guttenberg. He was in a movie about him having a baby, and it was really popular. And if you see his face, what's that?
Is that like 3 Men and a Little Baby?
3 Men and a Little Baby, yeah.
Well, he's old now.
Yeah, for sure. But this was this film was made in 1984, which was like kind of right him coming into his heyday.
Back when he looked more like that. Yeah.
At any rate, so he was in it, and John Lithgow was in it, and a couple other like more famous actors. But at any rate, similar thing. There was a kid who went blind from looking at the flash. Fucking dumb. Also very similar in the fact that they were all holed up in a basement, and people just like throughout the movie, like a couple times, people just came. Also, somebody broke down. I think it went upstairs, and they were like, hey, if you go outside, you can't come back in. And this was in Kansas. So this is like right outside where all the missile silos, where all the ground bursts would be, which kicked up the most fallout and the thickest fallout, right?
Yeah.
Because the ground burst is always considered to be worse, which I think, and I couldn't find it. Maybe you could tell me. I did some searching, and of course, most of the sources that'll come up on a Google search are not really exactly what I'm looking for. But my question was wouldn't most of is it heaviest particles meaning like pebbles, or is it heaviest particles meaning the things that are the most radioactive would fall out first?
I imagine they're probably talking about the radioactive stuff, and in that case, it's going to be like, the fission particles and things of that nature, the immediate daughter particles.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, if there's rocks and shit that get blown up, yeah, that's coming back first. So yeah, you get smacked around by.
Well, I was just thinking in terms of us being 60 miles away, if Beale got hit with a ground burst because it has a runway, a long runway, which is a target. Plus, it has, the drones that are there are above ground, so like an air burst would destroy them, right? Like if you drop it on the base, like an air burst is going to take out all the hangars and crush all that shit and destroy it, like no doubt. That's not a concern. The air burst is going to take out the early warning radar system that's there, right? Because that's an above ground piece of equipment. But they might ground burst to take out the runway too, right? Because you would have to ground burst to take out a runway, hypothetically. I guess not really. If you do like a really low altitude, like 30 or 50 feet off the ground, like it might be hot enough to buckle the runway and destroy it without like landing a direct ground burst, right?
Do you really even need to worry about the runway if you can destroy all the planes?
You don't want your fucking bombers to have a place to land. Strategic bombers. Because that's the whole thing. It's like any 10,000 foot runway is a target. I've looked at some maps that have a target like way out in the desert to the northeast of us. It's like, or it's on the Modoc Plateau. It's on the other side of the mountains. And it was like, what the fuck is out there that would be a target? Because I saw an old Soviet, a map of Soviet targets, potential Soviet targets on the West Coast. And it was one of them. And then I looked at it, and it's not even an air base. It's like, it is owned by the army, but like it's a landing strip. It's like a 12,000 foot landing strip. I think it is intended to be an emergency landing strip, not just for bombers and high altitude surveillance aircraft, but also for the space shuttle. They just have a really long runway periodically in case they're like, all right, well, you're an emergency and you're coming back into Earth orbit at about this angle. This is about the best we can do to get you on the ground as soon as possible.
And now we don't even have space shuttles.
What's that?
Now we don't even have space shuttles.
No, we don't really, do we?
That's how you know America's not great anymore and will probably never be great again. Don't even have the damn space shuttle. I used to have one of those as a toy. Now we don't even make them. We don't go to space.
Do Nate Hagen's?
Yeah, we can.
I thought we weren't doing the episode.
Oh, if you just want bullshit, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I thought we were going to pass it because there was a lot of material to cover.
Yeah, okay. I was just reading about ground burst, and it was
let's talk about
attention. Yeah, brought to my attention that you get a whole bunch of extra nuclear fallout because you irradiate a bunch of shit too.
Yep. Yeah, you have, what is it called? Neutron activation, right?
Yeah.
You have a lot of neutron activation of a bunch of dirt and gravel and shit that you don't quite get when you airburst.
Yeah.
Because most airbursts are done actually like several hundred feet above ground or more. Like they're not, but a ground burst is where they're like, the detonation is like at like when it hits something at the ground. So it like, that's the one that leaves a big crater, and that crater, all the stuff that used to be in that hole is now airborne and irradiated.
Yeah, and in a lot of instances, even vaporized and just waiting to recondense.
Yeah.
So it can travel quite a distance if there's any sort of prevailing wind.
Right. And most prevailing winds head due east. right, are jet stream. So anything that gets into mid to high latitudes is mostly going to blow east. That's why my parents were like, well, you guys can always come here if like things go south. And I was like, you're east of San Francisco, you're east of Sacramento, you're more or less like southeast of fucking Beale Air Force Base.
Yeah.
Like, you're basically probably in the fucking fallout, like the heaviest fallout path of like all of the targets that are like remotely a concern to me. Like all nuclear targets are a concern to me in the sense of like what it means for like the world.
Yeah.
But in terms of like what I need to concern myself with fallout, like I would concern myself if a bomb dropped on Sacramento or a bomb dropped on San Francisco, I would still seek shelter. But I would only seek shelter for 3 days, and I would not be nearly as concerned as if it hit Beale. And fortunately, the way the winds blow when it gets real hot in the valley is they come down off of Mount Shasta. So we're fortunate enough to where if there was a burst down there, because remember, 600 miles an hour winds, right?
Yeah.
Would be because big fireball lifts up, all that heat draws, all this wind whoosh, comes rushing. So we'd have wind coming from the south. So even locally, we are more likely to deal with less immediate fallout or less severe immediate fallout. Just because the wind's going to be going south away from us, and away from towards the blast and away from us, pushing any additional fallout further, and then the winds aloft are all going east. We just have to worry about like some particular weather patterns where like our normal southerly like summer winds, right? Like off of the Delta in the evening, like the winds come out of the southeast.
Mm-hmm.
That would bring radiation if that was the conditions. But like under a lot of conditions, I would still seek shelter, right? Like I said, for at least a few days, but I don't think we'd be dealing with like significant hot spots or anything around town. Like we're not going to be like, oh, look at all the radiation that landed like on this side of town, right? Like we wouldn't be dealing with that.
No, most likely not. And if you were, it would be all the rich people up in the hills who were probably best off.
Right.
Because they'd have the wind coming down from the hills.
That's right. You were looking something up. What'd you have?
I don't know. I was just looking up ground bursts.
Ground bursts are scary, dude.
Yeah.
Scarier than air bursts by a big margin.
Yeah.
That's what they always say, like, right, like, because all the missile silos, like in what is Wyoming, Colorado, Kansas, or whatever it is, fucking, or the Dakota, South Dakota, all the missile silos around there would all be ground bursts, right? Because they'd be trying to destroy the silo and collapse the silo onto the missile, so you can't launch the missile.
Precisely, yeah.
Yeah, and so you'd be like spitting up massive amounts of like heavy particulate that's irradiated, which would then presumably the heavier stuff would fall out sooner, and some of the lighter irradiated particles might carry longer, even though they have the same half-life.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You're going to have a higher concentration of that radiation closer to the blast than further away.
Yeah.
Which is what I bank on. This is a long Nate clip. Maybe we can just talk about the Nate clip and then use that as an intro / segue into Monday's show where we go. The only problem I fear about it is and it's obviously we've committed to not talking about it, but like things are moving so fucking fast. I just want to lay out our premise. We're going to talk about and lay out our evidence on Monday, but basically what we're saying is that a lot of this U.S. involvement in this Israel-Hamas crisis is oriented towards a long-term strategic objective of maintaining military control of the Middle East to extract oil as civilizations collapse and as fossil fuel markets become tighter. We want to control the 60+% of the world's liquid oil and also like a huge chunk of natural gas.
Yeah.
Because you hear a few people talk about it, but not many. Nate talks about it right here, Nate Higgins. So play that.
those people following this podcast are aware that energy is the currency of the universe and that oil is currently, doesn't always have to be, the hemoglobin of modern culture. What you might not know is that within around 800 miles of Israel, in a triangle called the Black Gold Triangle by some, contains around 50 to 65% of all the world's remaining oil. So, without getting into, predictive speculation on what's going to happen the next few months, which I never really do. This podcast is about painting the game board of the next decade and beyond. I really don't have an edge in predicting what's going to happen in the near term. But if you squint and take a step back and look at this situation, there are all kinds of complex potential Archduke Ferdinand-like situations here between the Sunnis and the Shias, between the Muslims and the Christians, between the Middle East and the West, between a new potential axis of Russia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and China, and Israel, the US, and the UK. I don't know. But in a world where interest rates are starting to rise, government deficits are ballooning, polarization is high, the agreements between who's buying what, using what currency and what letters of credit and what banking system, it's like there's this choosing of sides that's occurring behind the scenes from the unipolar world order that we grew up with into something else. So my only comment there is I think the timeline to the Great Simplification just got shorter. And of course,
Just got
again, when I
shorter.
say that, Palestine and Pakistan and Madagascar and Sri Lanka and Cyprus and many other places have already experienced a great simplification. So when I say the great simplification, I really mean when is it coming from me or for you listening to this program?
100%.
So I think
believe
that
I've
the
said that before.
timeline just accelerated because oil is precarious and important.
Yes, my friend.
Oh, that was it. That was the
Yeah.
first clip. Do you agree that oil is precarious and important?
I think he goes on to explain it, but I think yes. I mean, I think that I think right after this he'll define it. But he says oil futures are trading at $1 higher than they are right now. Than the price of oil now. They're saying like a year from now, oil will be $7.50 or $7 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
A gallon. Or gas will be $7 a gallon, basically.
Yep. And we'll pay it because we have to.
Right, but that squeezes, right? Like when gasoline became $5 a gallon earlier in 2007, it caused a whole global financial crisis.
Yeah,
it really did.
I mean, I think I'm just kind of used to global financial crises.
Yeah,
just really waiting for the big one. That'll actually take everybody out, not just the unlucky people.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of what he says too at the second half, he's like, here's all the things on my mind and causing me anxiety. He's like, and then my girlfriend came home and she's like, what'd you do while I was out of town for 3 days or whatever? And he's like, this, that, and the other thing. She's like, did you dig up the potatoes? Did you do this? Did you do that? And he's just thinking, it's like, this is all you do? You just fucking I think that another writer, I think it was Umar Haq, I think his name is, on Medium. We might have read his stuff before. I feel like we should probably regularly read his essays as part of like what we do. But it might have been him that was just like, fetch wood, carry water. Like when push comes to shove, no matter the political and economic context of your present moment, like when push comes to shove, like your objective as a human being is to fetch wood and carry water,
Mhm.
right? You got to be able to gather enough firewood to keep yourself warm, and you have to be able to get enough water to keep yourself fucking alive, right?
Yeah.
So the whole fetch wood, carry water is just kind of like, it's kind of like what Dr. Wong said about like wiping asses, right? And brushing teeth. You just got to
Can't
do
fetch
it.
wood
It's
so
not
wrong.
fun. There's no way to do it so wrong that you die.
Well, there's
It's
definitely ways
just
to do
work.
fetching wood wrong enough to die.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just like what I mean by making that parallel about brushing teeth and wiping asses is, besides making a Rick and Morty reference, is to say that those are kind of just mundane tasks, and fetching water and cutting wood or whatever are also kind of mundane tasks that are essential to social reproduction. Basically, right?
Yeah. I mean, hey, with any luck, the Earth will be so hot we won't have to worry about being cold and needing wood. We'll just have to focus on water.
Yeah. Another thing, he approaches this great simplification. He's talking about it, and he mentioned that Saudi Arabia has like 60% of the world's remaining known oil reserves.
Yeah.
Right, and it's interesting because we're going to get into it and show you evidence on Monday. I'll refrain my thoughts for now. But a lot of the stuff I kind of was like digging into it, and it's like, what the fuck? If you just look, it seems like a mighty convenient timeline, right? Iran and Saudi Arabia, both in the region, have pretty fucking solid oil reserves. I mean, Saudi Arabia literally has like most of like half the remaining world's oil reserves.
Mm-hmm.
And they both just joined BRICS like 6 weeks ago.
Oh, did they? I could only see
They
that they were
did.
invited. I didn't find
Oh
any
no,
articles
at the
saying they
BRICS
joined.
summit they accepted. They were added.
Okay.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of chatter. And then I was trying to figure out BRICS isn't a security commitment. I know that I heard somebody criticize BRICS for not stepping up and like taking a side on the Israel-Palestine bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
I say bullshit, but I mean on the question. They're not exactly spineless. It's just not their purview, right?
Yeah.
Like,
It's an economic thing.
but now that the U.S. is like, oh, Iran is shooting rockets by proxy from Houthi rebels in Yemen to Israel over 1,000 fucking miles or whatever.
Yeah.
And then you have American politicians who are like, nuke Iran, right? Like, the whole joke, bomb, 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 bomb Iran, bomb Iran.
Yeah.
It's fucking stupid. Poor Iranians, man. It's a
waste of
conventional
bombs.
military. I always tell fucking Brooke, I'm like, we have no fucking clue. If we try and wage war, it's like there's only one way this ends. It's with nukes. Because if we're really going to go to war with Iran, like we're not going to win on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
It's a conventional military. Do you think there's any support for fucking protracted, like lots of bloodshed of American fucking bodies?
No.
I saw a poll. Sorry, please.
I was just gonna say, and the tech won't protect us. Everyone's always like, we've got superior, weapons and technology, and it's like that doesn't make it so that we're like 100 to 1 better.
Well, Iran is also very highly technically advanced, enough so to where one of our drones that crossed their border from Afghanistan, they downed it, and within 2 years they had reverse engineered it and built their own. Do you remember that?
No, I hadn't heard about it, but it sounds
they
appropriate.
downed a drone back in 2017, 2018, and it took them a couple years, and they had reverse engineered it. That's when they're like, oh my god, this is our drone design being sold or being deployed on the battlefield in Ukraine via Iranian drone sales to Russia. It's our drone design because they fucking downed our drone and they reverse engineered it.
Yeah.
So like they're technically advanced enough to take high tech equipment, break it down, and build it. Like,
well, and then
all
nowadays,
they did was skip all the engineering time, right?
Yeah,
They're able to do it cheaper because they missed all the art. They got to skip. They just got to pirate the R&D. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say so much of the shit's available online. I mean, obviously not the specifics for the military grade
Sensors and
stuff,
cameras
but
and all that shit. Yeah.
yeah, well, and for the military grade things, but I mean, like you can assemble a fine killing machine from like off the shelf drone equipment. It's not an impossibility. It's not even really hard.
I floated the idea before as a business too. I was like, let's just fucking put a couple grand into some 3D printers and start making fucking drones that can drop little grenadlets.
Yeah, on your
Somebody's
annoying
gonna want
neighbors.
them. I mean, there's probably some churches up in Reading that want to stockpile this shit for when the fascists start their civil war. If you
It's
don't
true.
mind arming the fascists.
Well, you just got to sell to the other side too.
Oh, we'll sell to both sides.
Yeah.
That's clever. Didn't
Yeah.
Benicio del Toro tell us don't join?
Tell us what?
Don't join.
Don't join what?
It's
What are you talking
fucking.
about?
It's a Last Jedi joke, dude. I know you.
Oh, I saw
remember
that movie
Benicio
once.
del Toro in The Last Jedi when
He was the
he's
guy
like,
who
"Oh, hey,
stuttered.
look, the rich people sell weapons to both sides.
Mm-hmm.
Don't join. Like, don't choose a side because it's all fucking bullshit." It's basically the whole purpose of that. And then people are like, "I hate The Last Jedi because Luke is not my Luke Skywalker." And it's like, you all are fucking children.
It was Tom Skywalker, clearly.
Seriously. Even fucking Mark Hamill was like, "It's not my Luke Skywalker."
I just don't watch it anymore. It's that easy. If you don't like it, don't watch it.
For real, but people still bitch about it.
Yeah.
Hence, I still defend it.
I don't remember much of the movies anymore just because they were not very impressive or worth remembering.
It's
Like,
true.
I got the like sweeping gestures of it, but other than that, I don't remember too many details of it.
I believe you. Anyway, so yeah, shit's going to hell in a handbasket. It's fucking crazy. I don't even know if we'll make it till Monday. Maybe the nukes drop before then. We don't know. But all we know is that they're hell bent on starting a war with fucking Iran.
Yeah.
And the U.S. is 100% committed to Israel. This is not on our podcast that we're not doing tonight. But it is something that I was looking up and trying to figure and make sense of and see where it would fit. But Biden basically just said he's going to try and sell Congress and the American public on giving a huge aid package, including $60 million to the Ukraine and $10 million to Iran. Do you know what to Israel? Do you know what Israel's annual military budget is?
No, but I know we pay for it.
We don't pay for all of it. We give them about $4 billion, which pays for a significant portion of their missile defense systems. Their military budget, beyond what we give them and what other people give them, and beyond like how they do like bullshit accounting tricks. Like, you can give a figure, but you don't actually know how fucking accurate that is, right?
Mm-hmm.
But on the books, it says about 20 billion. 22 billion or something. So if the US gave them 10 billion just like right now on a whim, that's literally like half their annual budget. And you have to wonder why the US is investing in such an expansion, because if you look at other militaries in the region, like we are giving Israel more money than like any single annual budget of most militaries in the entire region. It's like Jordan, it's like 12 billion, right? Or Saudi Arabia, I think, is a bit higher. It's closer to Israel, like 18 billion or something. But like, there's a bunch of little countries around there, like Qatar, and then granted, they're all under like a nuclear umbrellas or security arrangements with other countries. But like, generally speaking, most of those countries spend very little. Israel spends quite a bit compared to them, and Israel spends almost nothing compared to the United States. You look at it, I think Russia is the third largest spender on their military, and their military budget's 80 something billion, I think. 80 billion. That's like 1/10 of the annual fucking military budget of the United States. It's so absolutely absurd how much money we fucking blow on the military, dude.
Yeah.
And it's got to be a grift because there's got to be a diminishing return. There's no way that we are 10 times more effective than the Russian military in the way that government works. And they do this with everything. I think just last week we were talking about it. It's like they just, we spend X amount on education. And so since we're spending more on education, then that's a good thing, right? And I'm like, what about outcomes? Why are we not measuring by outcomes? Why are we measuring by how much money we spend? Because how much money we spend doesn't actually affect the fucking outcome when the money is fucking being spent in a corrupt grift system, right? And here's the perfect example. 800. This is outdated. I think this might be from
2021. Yeah,
because it's like 80 billion higher for the US.
Yeah,
it's almost 900 billion. It's fucking absurd. Well, look at China.
We'll get to a trillion soon enough.
China's next with less than 300 billion. So you're like, but what's the difference? China's population is more than 3 times the United States. So per capita spending is completely fucking inverted.
Yeah.
Their per capita spending is like, what is that?
Almost nothing.
Very little compared to ours. And then the next after China's fucking India, the UK, Russia. This has all changed since 2021 because the war in Ukraine and everything else. I think Russia, the figure I saw was like 80 from 2023 was 87. So that's significantly higher. I think the UK was spending around 80. I think India was spending around 90. China's was still right around that 293. It might have been 280 is what I think I saw. I don't recall. But Russia's definitely spending a bit more than that. And the US is spending like 80 billion more. From the last 2 years. And that doesn't count all the diplomatic money. So when we're like, we're going to pass $100 billion aid package to Israel, it was Israel, Ukraine, Taiwan, and also the border, right? We're going to spend $100 billion. We're going to spend $60 billion to Ukraine. We're going to send 10 to Israel, and then the rest is going to Taiwan and the border wall. It's fucking crazy, bro.
I don't know what to say, man. Although I'm looking at a different website, and it says that defense budgets have gone down overall. It says 761 for the U.S., 230 for China.
Where's this?
Give me a sec.
Excuse me. That's not what I read. Okay.
Yeah. So United States, China, Russia's increased by 15,000 from that other one.
Or 15 billion.
That. Yep, that.
The checks.
Yep. This is why I'm not in the government doing accounting.
You're good.
But yeah,
you forgot quite a few zeros there, buddy.
I didn't forget them. I just put them in my own bank account.
Ooh, that'd be fun. I would love to be like, oh no, you're just missing 15,000. They're like, no, it's 15 billion. You're like, oh shit, did I take that many zeros?
Whoops.
Whoops. That's a lot of zeros.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just absurd, dude. We're just spending fucking astronomical amounts of money, and
especially given how cheap the alternatives are. Like, hey, what if we just focused on, making the world a slightly better place? What could the money do there?
100%. You want to play that Baby Yoda music?
Sure do. Once I load it up on the screen.
Sure do. You're like, yeah, bro, I've been ready to go for a while.
I'm tired tonight. I don't know why.
No, I'm tired too.
It's got nothing to do with this. I was tired earlier today.
How puffy my eyes are.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. But, hey, what's happening?
I was happy seeing a friend I haven't seen for a very long time. So I apologize. I was late and not really on top of my shit. This is a really heavy subject, and I really hope that things are kind of static between now and when we do our next show, because
Monday, please, God, just like give us
I
some
do wish
some
that we're
respite.
still here.
Yeah.
I know that things are getting serious enough for me.
Yeah.
Things are getting serious. I'm waiting for the music to play. You press
Oh,
play and
so
then press pause.
there you go. Go ahead.
I know things are getting serious enough for me and my family that we just ordered some potassium iodide.
Ooh.
Yeah, we just finally made a decision to get like a good medical reference manual and get some KI into the med pack, and we'll build out our, continue over the next week or two to build out our medical supplies. Should probably do a lot of different things. We should probably get some more food. I should probably go for more canned meats. Or other canned things with meat in them, like high protein, good fat, like, cans of stew and other things you can get at Winco or whatever, and just go buy fucking flats of that shit. And really kind of prep this stuff up. And I'm thinking about my radiation safety plan, and is my plan to like use the big heavy table we have with books and potentially totes full of fucking dirt and other things. What do I need to prepare in advance so that I can deploy that within half hour, an hour, right? Like, what do I have to have ready to go to be able to build it? Because we're just going to basically shelter in place, right?
Yeah. Wouldn't be the
I
first
still
time.
haven't made my window dressings, right? Like, I haven't cut plastic to size for my windows. That's a big thing I have to do soon. Get a big roll,
easy thing.
big painter's plastic and duct tape, right? Like, make sure you
Yeah.
fucking cut it out and you label everything. You know where it goes. You're right. It is cheap and relatively cheap and easy. And our whole plan, I tried to figure. I was doing like calculations on like air, because like we wouldn't really have like a system for air exchange. So I'm like, how much air is in the house, and how long could we actually be in a completely sealed up house and breathe that air before needing to exchange it? And I couldn't find a definitive figure, but I definitely seemed like, based on my rough volume calculations, that we go at least 3 or 4 days suffering zero consequences, and probably a couple more days before we would absolutely have to ventilate. Because that was my whole thing. I could have a more secure radiation shelter, but like ventilation would be like a unique consider. Like, if I built like a fucking pit in the ground, like, I'd have to figure out how to ventilate that, right? Like, because I can't make it big enough to hold enough air. But if I just like tape up all my vents and windows and doors, right? Like, and then we put a table in the living room and we stack fucking totes full of dirt on that, and then we pile our food and books and put chairs up and stack books and blankets around it and do all that, we can probably create enough shelter that if the radiation is not super, 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 super bad, which I don't expect it to be based on things we talked about in this episode about wind patterns and shit, as long as the radiation wasn't super bad, we'd probably be better off than most people.
Yeah.
Because most people aren't going to like be like, all right, bombs just dropped, what do we do? And I'm like, all right, we move the table here. We're going to do this. On the other side of this little partition wall, we're going to fill all of our pots and pans full of water, right? So that they can absorb some radiation, but then also like we have water at the table. When all of our like bottled sanitized water is done, we could just have pots full of water that we can use.
Yeah.
And other things, and that should work, right? Like, is water just neutrons, or can water work for gamma too?
Water works for gamma too. Not as well. It's much better at neutrons. But it's not nothing. That's for damn sure.
Yeah. And so I was debating, should I get like a whole fucking pile of sand delivered to my driveway and then fill sandbags, or should I just plan on having like totes. Like I planned on dragging garbage. Like we have all these brute totes that we use for like storage of like minor things.
Yeah.
Just planned
I
on
mean, totes of water,
pulling them all
especially-
in and filling them full of fucking dirt, which
I
would be
mean,
about
totes
2
full of
feet of
water.
dirt.
are the way to go, especially if you fill them ahead of time and put in stuff to retard algal growth, because then you have a store of water and shielding. That's the way to go.
Oh, you're saying I should just get some barrels of water?
Barrels of water, or even like totes, like you go buy a whole bunch. I mean, I don't recommend this because it's way too expensive, but like, the Costco totes, and just
The black and yellow ones?
yeah, just stack them up with water inside of them, or put I forget what it is. There's a tablet you can put in there to stop the algae for a while.
It's basically like a chlorine tablet or something.
Yeah.
I actually consider those totes too, because you could fill them full of damp sand or damp soil.
Yeah.
And like they're about 3 feet thick. Like that's all you would actually need.
Yep.
Even if you were outside and you just had a structure made of these fucking totes full of dirt. But we would be inside, so we would also have like a good 10 feet distance from the nearest fucking radiation particulate. And then we would have like be surrounded by totes full of dirt and also like buckets full of rice and other things that would like help absorb that gamma. And then we would like probably the first like 24, even as long as we can go, maybe 48 hours, would spend like the vast majority of our time under the table in our kind of like little like radiation den.
Yeah.
And then our bucket toilet would be outside of that, but you would be doing it for like 2 or 3 minutes, right? Like and then be back in the shelter and do that for a while, and probably more or less stay like in that kind of shelter for several days, and then venture out a little bit more and more as the days went on, but still sleep under there, so that you have a good chunk of 8 or 10 hours that you're like more or less completely sheltered to reduce your overall dosage. Thing about that radiation, though, you don't know what you're getting unless you have a dosimeter.
Yeah, that's the ultimate way. You got to buy those too. They're not super expensive.
I was going to get the little dosimeter cards that you leave packaged in the freezer until go time.
Yeah.
And then we could at least just carry those on us. So, like, if whatever reason, like, we started getting sick or whatever, something happened, we think we got exposed, we could look at the dosimeter card and be like, no, our total dose since this shit started is still like within a fucking safe range, right? Because the thing is, like, under these circumstances, we're not really thinking about. Even Brooke said something, because she has comes from like a family with a history of thyroid issues,
and
so she's like, "Oh, I'm already fucked," and I was like, "Yeah, you might be, but like realistically speaking, we're just trying to get through like." In this event, we're only just trying to get through like the next couple weeks, right? Like, I'm really sad that you got a dosage enough to give you cancer, 30 years from now, but like, not much of a concern at this point. Cancer 30 years from now seems like a pretty good fucking trade-off for like
not dying immediately,
being strong and healthy and not dying during all of this, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah. A little slightly shortened life. I went and posted a thing in the chat for you. I actually give you a screenshot in Discord. I found an equation for calculating how long you could live in your house.
Awesome. 1,120 square meters.
Yeah, for your
10
house.
healthy adult people.
Yeah. The thing at the top is just how big I think your house is based on what I know about it, and everything else is like a kind of their scenario, and they go through all the different numbers. You would have to plug and chug from there. Anywho, with thunderous applause.
Yeah, no, this has been a fun discussion. I'm sorry that I was not put together enough to actually touch on our stuff. And honestly, like, it's just been so goddamn heavy. Like, and again, everybody's talking about it all the time. So, like,
yeah,
I don't know. We should probably throw a part 1 on our title.
Yeah.
If that's not too much trouble.
You talking about this one?
Yeah.
I'll have to do it after the fact.
No, I understand.
Yeah. It turns out once you get started with your live stream, anything you do over in the editing, it doesn't matter.
No, but once it posts, you can go back and change it to part 1.
Yeah.
Of 2.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I'll change it from a shooting the poodoo to something else too.
Sure.
We'll
But
go
just
back.
whatever. Yeah, and that's fine, man. Like, I think that we have a pretty good narrative that would take a whole episode because, like, a lot of these sources are pretty decent.
Mhm.
And I think the narrative is fairly well constructed. I was proud of it. I just had this thing come up because I did all that work yesterday, and then this came up like this morning. So I felt obligated to do that.
Yeah.
But I love you, and I'm so happy that I got to spend some time with you, and I'm so happy that we got to talk about nuclear fucking radiation protection. Because it's something that I always drop into live streams when I'm watching live streams. I'll just randomly, I'm that guy that's like, just like time distance shielding. Time distance shielding. I'll just type that into the fucking chat. And I'm hoping someone engages with me, but no one ever does. Because I think most people are fucking oblivious or too scared. So when you're like, I'm like, time distance shielding, have a plan. What are you going to do if this happens? And they're like, I can't imagine that would happen. The world would end. It's like the world wouldn't end, except that you're accepting your fate as the world will end because you don't want to put in the work to figure out how to survive.
Yeah, and that's their prerogative.
It is their prerogative, but these are all people that are like, we got to change the world. And it's like, we're never going to fucking wage revolution because y'all can't fucking figure out basic shit like time distance shielding or how to plant a garden and how to preserve food and how to fucking fill a bucket full of fucking rice, right? Like, it's absurd.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is everybody's going to complain and shit's going to keep getting worse. And that's just the way it is. And then at some point, something's going to happen. Everybody's going to be super stoked, even though that event is dragging us further and further and further towards the abyss. And that's because when liberty dies, it dies.
With thunderous applause.
Thank you, my friends, and good night.
Good evening, everyone.
Peace.